What went wrong for the Giants in the 2023 season? That's coming up next on the Giants Chronicles podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Giants Chronicles podcast. I am your host, Gabe, and we are back. We took a little bit of took a long break, but we are back, and we are bringing better content to you here on the Giants Chronicles podcast. I'll have new weekly shows starting with this one, and maybe twice weekly, but I'll promise you guys one show a week to break down New York Giants football like we all like. And I'm glad to be back, guys. It's good to be back. So I want to start with this episode is going to be about what did go wrong for the Giants in 2023. Obviously, coming out of 2022 season, we went on a playoff run, not a long one, but we went into the playoffs, won a playoff game for the first time in a long time, and we went to the divisional game and had a chance to go to the NFC Championship. Obviously, it was a crash landing in Philly, but we had a chance. We were in the running in the playoffs. So this year, obviously that changed. What was the difference from last year? So first, I really want to start with the approach of how they ran training camp and their offseason program. So obviously everyone knows the free agency period and the offseason period was great for the Giants. They signed a standout linebacker, Bobby Okereke. They traded for a superstar tight end in Darren Waller. They added a Paris Campbell. They added they re-signed, so they drafted John Michael Schmitz. They drafted Jalen Hyatt. All sounds great, right? But really it was going to come together with how it looked on the field. Okay? So we go into training camp. And the Giants take this approach of we're going to be giving out rest days a lot to players who have an injury history. Sterling Shepard, Darren Waller, Dexter Lawrence was getting rest days. It was a lot of rest days. And you had to sit there and think, whoa, I mean, what's it going to be like acclimating to the regular season? It was a country club-led training camp ran by Brian Dable. That was really the feel. I was there. I went to training camp a couple days. It felt like it felt like an in-season practice. For those that don't know, an in-season practice is more lighter contact than a training camp practice, and there really wasn't that much contact happening at Giants training camp. It was very, it wasn't a lot of hitting, nothing like that. It was a very soft practice, and it seemed like the Giants were really just let's get through training camp without injuries, which was kind of their philosophy. Here's the problem. Once you get to an NFL game, you are going to have injuries, okay? Like you are going to be taking hits that you're not taking in practice. If these players aren't acclimated to taking those type of hits in a game, they're going to get injured in the game then. So this idea that let's keep them safe through training camp, let's just get to week 1 and it will all be fine. I don't think that was a good philosophy by Brian Dable. I think I could see where he was. I could see what he was thinking. We have a lot of injury issues the past couple years, and they wanted to try something new. But clearly that didn't work. The players, and not to mention the players did not look ready week 1. It was a disaster against the Dallas Cowboys. An absolute disaster. It was the first Sunday night football game of the season. Regular season Sunday night football game. And it was a disaster. It was embarrassing for the New York Giants. We got embarrassed in front of the whole nation because the team just didn't look ready to play. Okay. And you have to think about also another key issue this season has been the offensive line. And that also goes back to training camp. In training camp, they were doing this rotational type stuff, putting Ben Bredesen at center and, let's swap Josh Azudu in there and moving the guards, Mark Lewinsky, Ben Bredesen, Josh Azudu, moving the guards, John Michael Schmitz. Oh, you're a starting center now. There was no consistency in training camp. Trey Hawkins, you get a starting quarterback. We're going to put Dory in the slot, and that never worked. That never worked in the game. So it was just a lot of things you look at in the Giants, decision making this offseason just looks like they got too cocky. And the other thing is you had players saying they were talking about a Super Bowl in the locker room, a Super Bowl run. They're going on a Super Bowl run. Sterling Shepard said Brian Dable's talking about a Super Bowl. It seems like this Giants team took what they had last season and said, well, we made it to the playoffs last season. We'll be fine this year. We'll be fine this year. We added talent. We'll be fine this year. We'll be fine this year. And then the talent just never, no matter how much talent they added this offseason, it just never worked. You go out against week 1 against the Cowboys, and it's a disaster. Okay. And not to mention something that's big for the Giants in 2022 was they went out week 1 and they beat the Titans, who then were looked at as a solid NFL team. I forget the Titans in the playoff that year, but they were looked at as a good NFL team, well coached, and we beat them. Okay, in the first game, that was a huge confidence. You saw Brian Dable dancing in the locker room after that. That was a huge confidence booster of the New York Football Giants in 2022. And to go out there in 2023, first week of the regular season, and once that blocked field goal happened, you knew it was over. Once that blocked field goal happened, you knew it was over. I mean, that was horrible. I mean, I was, first of all, your franchise left tackle you just paid got injured on that play. Okay. Then he played for the rest of the game. We'll get to that. Daniel Jones, you just paid a lot of money, looked bad. Your offensive line looked horrific, which continued throughout the season. You had no depth for your offensive line behind your starters, and your starters weren't that great either. You plugged Evan Neal in there in at right tackle, and we're like, oh, he'll be fine. He has an offseason, and he looked disastrous all year. And really, it just seems like it was a huge the Giants had great, huge plans for the season, and it looked like they took them for granted, and they found out, really. I mean, they really found out exactly. And they deserve, honestly, if you look at it, maybe they deserve to find out because Country Club ran training camp, okay, and you get your butts kicked in week 1. And you really have to look at that and say, Brian, do you regret that? That's what a reporter should be asking them at the end of the season. Do you regret how you ran your offseason program? How you ran training camp? Do you regret that? Because there were a lot of questions about how Brian Dable ran training camp. A lot of questions. And it wasn't looked at as bad because, hey, this is a coach of the year. Hey, this is a coach of the year. He's fine. He went to the playoffs last year. He's fine. It's okay. Brian Dable knows what he's doing, and they get their butts kicked week 1. Okay. Bad taste in the Giants' mouth. Disappointment in the locker room. And that was just a terrible, terrible, terrible start for the disastrous season that would continue. Okay. Now, the second thing with the Giants is you really have to look at this medical staff and question some of their decision making. Okay. And it really starts with Evan Neal. Actually, it really starts with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones tore his we don't know if he tore it. We don't know exactly what play he tore it on. I forget if he said what play he tore it on. I think he tore his ACL, came out of the game, or it was the end of the third quarter, and the medical staff puts him back in, and he just collapses. He just walks back and collapses. He snaps the ball under center, runs back and collapses. How are you letting your franchise quarterback go on the field after he tore his ACL? How is that? How does that make any sense? And Andrew Thomas is another story that's really questionable. Okay, first of all, Andrew Thomas says he tore his hamstring on the first play or on the field goal, on the blocked field goal, which we were talking about how that led to the disaster the New York Giants would continue. How is Andrew Thomas, your franchise left tackle, how is Andrew Thomas allowed to go back in that game if he's telling you that his hamstring is hurt? How are you just letting him go back? And he didn't look good. He didn't look good in that game. Let's face it. Well, he looked okay, but he did not look like the same dominant Andrew Thomas. This medical staff gets paid to evaluate players' injuries. How are you letting a guy with a torn hamstring run back on the field and play the rest of the game when you're down 40-0? I mean, they weren't down 40-0, but they were getting their butts kicked all game. So that started week 1 with the medical staff. Okay. And then we rushed Andrew Thomas back. I believe it was maybe before the Seattle game. We tried to get Andrew Thomas back. But Andrew Thomas isn't ready to come back, and he hurts his hamstring again in practice, or he re-injures his hamstring in practice. Again, why is this player, if his hamstring's still hurting, why is this player aggravating another injury that he had already? You really have to question some of this stuff. And I know this is very fine details, but these fine details led to the disaster of the New York Football Giants. Okay? What do you do when Andrew Thomas goes out? You throw Josh Azudu out there. Okay? Another questionable decision. Okay? Why are you putting a young you invested a 3rd round pick in a guard, not a left tackle, in a guard. And I know what you're going, he has flexibility. He played both at college. Okay. He's a guard in the NFL. He was evaluated as a guard. That was his position going into the draft. Why on earth is your reaction when Andrew Thomas goes down to put Josh Azudu at left tackle? You can't trust him at guard. Why are you going to put him at left tackle? Defending Daniel Jones' blind side. Okay? And we all know how it ended. It led to Daniel Jones. Getting absolutely demolished. I mean, he hurt his neck in the Miami game. And, Pat Leonard of the Daily News reported that after, in the locker room after the game, Josh Azudu is almost crying because he injured his quarterback. Do you really want someone you have a future plan for in the future to be a starter at guard? Do you want to destroy his confidence at a position of left tackle where he doesn't even normally play? That's inexcusable. It really is inexcusable. And, I kind of find it unbelievable that happened. I mean, seriously, that is just unexcusable, and it shouldn't be happening like that. Play the guys where you want at guard. If you're going to have Matt Parrott on the roster as a tackle, play him at tackle when Andrew Thomas goes down. If he's your swing tackle, and at this point, guys, Tyree Phillips was not on the roster. If he's your swing tackle, play him like he's your swing tackle. Don't put a young player that doesn't even play tackle out there at left tackle. Okay? That's another issue I had, is it seemed like we were just plugging guys in where they didn't play. Okay? And another thing. You re-signed 10-year veteran Sterling Shepard. Okay? Now, young Shep is one of my favorite players. Sterling Shepard is one of my favorite players. Okay? But why would you re-sign him if you know you're not going to play him? It felt like it was just a free pass for Sterling Shepard. Throughout training camp, he made the roster. He has no special teams value. You cut Jamison Crowder and kept Sterling Shepard. Jamison Crowder turns out to be a great punt returner and is now with the Commanders, who's had, I believe he was a special teams player of the week 1 week. And, I think that's just inexcusable to say, Sterling Shepard, you've been here for 10 years. We'll give you a pass. You're on the roster. And not to mention, you also had Paris Campbell, who now has been inactive the last couple weeks of the season. And Paris Campbell plays the same position Sterling Shepard does. But instead, you're going to make Paris Campbell inactive, and then you're going to have Sterling Shepard active. But Sterling Shepard isn't going to play the whole game. He's going to play once. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. I don't want to say he's a waste of a roster spot, but be honest with yourself. Why is Sterling Shepard suiting up on game days if you're not going to play him? Be honest. So play him or don't suit. That's what I said. I mean, he just stands on the sideline in his uniform. He is a good wide receiver. He has done nothing to show you he's a bad wide receiver. Now, when he has gone in there in this year, has he had a couple drops and miscues? Yes, he has. But that's because he's in his head. Sterling Shepard is in his head. Sterling Shepard realizes my time at Giants is coming to an end. Every catch he gets, he doesn't want to take for granted. Okay? Every target, I should say, he gets, he doesn't want to take for granted. And he's completely in his head because he gets one target, drops it, and he gets, they take him out. They don't give him a rhythm. They don't give him a rhythm on the field. They take him out after one play of putting him in. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why would you have re-signed Sterling Shepard to a veteran contract? I mean, it was vet minimum, but why would you have done that if you knew you weren't going to have a plan and you weren't going to play it? Okay. And I understand you want to play your young guys. Jalen Hyatt has looked, has been a bright spot. He's had great deep ball catches. But Jalen Hyatt is shown he can't play the quick game. They have tried to get Jalen Hyatt involved in the quick game, and it just seems like you play Jalen Hyatt in press man, and it's done. Jalen Hyatt can't get off press man, which he's a rookie. And, as much as we like to, sit here and trash on that Dallas Cowboys coach who said, oh, well, you're fast, you can run straight down the field and catch a ball, but you can't, can you do it in the quick game, in the route running quick game? And it seems like it's looking like, at least right now, that he's, that's kind of his issue. That's what he needs to work on, which is fine. An NFL wide receiver needs to work on something. It's his rookie year. He has plenty of time to fix it. That's kind of how you got to look at it. Plenty of time to fix it. So that's another thing. That's another misuse by Brian Daboll. These are all decisions that the head coach, the medical staff, maybe not, but playing Josh Azudu, not playing Sterling Shepard, Paris Campbell inactive. These are all decisions that head coach makes. Okay. And then this report comes out that, and we don't know, obviously, I will have coverage on this for you. We don't know if Wink Martindale is going to be fired or not. We don't know yet. But, this report comes out that there's tension between Brian Daboll and Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale makes this team look somewhat okay to watch. I watched the New York Giants, and the only thing I can seriously be proud of is the way this defense fights, causing turnovers, fumbles, punch-out fumbles, okay? Interceptions. They are the only reason this season that I can be proud of the New York Giants, okay? And that's all led by Wink Martindale. When Wink Martindale plays his man defense, he wins us football games. He hasn't done it as of recent, but that's just because the offense, fumbles it so much, basically. Not fumbles the game, basically. Okay. It's honestly like, if you get rid of Wink Martindale, you're gonna have several problems because you built your team, your defense of side of the ball, around what Wink Martindale likes to do. Tay Banks, he's a press man corner. He's very good in press man coverage. What are you going to do if you bring a Leslie Frazier in who's going to run zone? What are you going to do? We don't know what Banks looks like in zone, and we've seen how bad the Giants look in zone this year when they've ran zone. Okay? All right. You got Bobby Okereke, really good at blitzing. He's had a couple sacks this year, I believe. He's had 2 or 3. Been a good blitzing linebacker. That is a Wink Martindale system type thing. Isaiah Simmons has looked like a great gadget player for Wink Martindale's system. As a linebacker, safety, he's lined up all over the field in what Wink Martindale calls his positionless defense, and it's looked good. I don't understand, and all these players, every time a beat reporter talks to a player, the player always says how much they love Wink Martindale. So what would you do if you are going to get rid of the player, the coach the players love to play for? How are you going to explain that to the coaches? Sure, are the defensive rankings not that great? No, they're not. I'm not saying they are, but it hasn't looked terrible on tape. There's no reason other than you don't get along. But to me, Brian Daboll, why do you not get along with him? Okay, now, could it be that Wink has exposed players when they're wrong, like Xavier McKinney? Okay, Xavier McKinney was all mad after the Raiders game, talking about the game plan, and he didn't like the game plan. And Wink called him out for it. Wink said, that's BS. That's what Wink said. Wink called him out for that. Maybe Daboll didn't like that. Maybe Daboll was like, you're coming out of player. But Daboll runs and yells at these players all over the sideline. So it's like it's just and the other thing is maybe that's also part of the problem. Maybe Wink doesn't like how he runs at players and yells, and he kind of goes on. Allegedly, he goes on these tangents in the building at players, or in the meetings. He kind of has these blow ups, okay, of emotion. And I love Brian Dable's emotion. That was great last year, right? That was, you know, when Daniel threw that interception in Tennessee. All right. He just came at him, he came at him for throwing that interception. And the Giants won that game. And the Giants kept winning after that game. Okay. I don't understand why there's tension between these two. If it's a personal thing, great, but this is football. Don't make it a personal thing. Okay? Let Wink run his defense. Sit there and let Wink run his defense. You run your offense. Okay? If you want to call plays, Brian, do it in 2024 season. Do it. Fire Mike Kafka and do it. If you're going to sit there at the podium after games and say you don't like the play call, how about you do it yourself? Because, Brian, really what you made your name, what Dable made his name in doing was calling plays for Josh Allen, developing Josh Allen. That was what he made his name in doing. And if that's what he has to go back to for success, you can't just strip that responsibility of Kafka. You have to you just have to say, look, we got it. We got to part ways. It's not going to work anymore. Okay? And then Dable can go back to what he did well in Buffalo, calling the offensive plays. It's his playbook. If you don't know that, it's his playbook. This playbook Kafka is calling is his plays. Now, I don't think it's the plays that are the problem. If you watch the offense on all 22 different angles, it's not the plays that are the problem. It's the quarterback not reading the plays properly. It's the situational awareness by Kafka. And a great example is against the LA Rams a couple weeks ago. Okay. 2nd and 10. Okay. You got 40 seconds on the clock. You've got timeout. And you call a run up the middle for -2 yards. That's unexcusable. That is unexcusable. First of all, you should try to get closer for a field goal kicker. You should not expect Mason Crosby, who is an older kicker, wasn't in the league really that much this year. You should not expect to trot Mason Crosby out there and he make a 57-yard field goal. That's just not something you can expect him to do. All right? And by going backwards, you're just causing more problems. So, and I mean, it's so predictable for me to sit there in front of my television and say, this play is going to be a run up the middle by Saquon Barkley because they call it too much. And their O-line can't do the scheme blocking that they call. The blocking schemes do not fit these O-linemen. And it's like, why are we going to use this type of block? I believe it's zone blocking that they can't do. Justin Pugh can't do it. It's a problem. And if you can't run zone blocking efficiently, go back to last year and run what you ran last year because it wasn't zone blocking. Okay, I can tell you that it wasn't zone blocking. It just seems like they tried to get all fancy with the playbook this year. They added new plays in. They thought Daniel could take that next jump. This is a harder playbook. We're going to add this stuff. Let's see if you can handle it. And Daniel sure as hell couldn't handle it. I mean, week 1 was horrific. It just looked like he was playing scared. It looked like he was playing scared. He would not throw the ball down the field. He would not take the risk of throwing the ball down the field. And, it was a problem. And it just seems like, Daniel didn't take the jump they wanted him to, that they paid him to take. Okay. The O-line has been disastrous. All right. There is constant change at quarterback. That's the other thing. That's another problem I have with the season of 2023 for the New York Giants. Why on earth are you putting – okay, you say you're going to start Tommy DeVito. Okay, Tyrod Taylor comes back off of IR from a neck injury. You have the opportunity. Let's put Tyrod the veteran in, or let's go stay with Tommy DeVito. That is when you have to make that decision. And Brian Dable went with staying with Tommy DeVito. Okay? Once you said you are benching Tyrod Taylor, the veteran, and going with Tommy DeVito, you have got to stick to that. You have got to stick to that. He's a young quarterback. Now, sure, is Tommy DeVito ever going to be a starter? I don't think so. Okay? I don't think so. Has he shown potential to be a backup? Yes. Do we want to see more of that potential to see if he can really be a backup and win games in this league? Yes. But then you bench Tommy DeVito at halftime against the Eagles. I understand you wanted a spark, okay? But you really have to think about how you told Tyrod Taylor that Tommy DeVito gave you the best chance to win games. But then you're going to go back to him after that. You're going to say, "Yeah, forget about you, Tommy DeVito. We're going back to Tyrod Taylor." It just seems, and I get the NFL is a cruel business. I get it. You need to win the NFL. I get all of that, and I understand that. But to me, once you said that when Tyrod Taylor came back that Tommy DeVito was your starter, you should have stuck with it. And that is, I do believe that. That is what you should have done. Once you stuck with that, you should have stuck with that. But there was a lot of issues in 2023, just coaching. Clock management by Brian Dable wasn't great. There was a lot of coaching issues that you didn't really see in year one. And it's like, what happened to Brian Dable, the aggressive Brian Dable we saw in year one? Brian Dable, if it was 4th and 1, you knew Brian Dable was going for it. And it just seems like that's gone away this year. He's not as aggressive as he was his year one. And you have to say and wonder, is this the Brian Dable that it really is? Is this who Brian Dable is? He's not aggressive. He coached in year one like he had nothing to lose. This year, he coached like he had something to use. It was all this conservative stuff. We're not going to lose. We're not going to win the game, but we're not going to lose the game. We're going to try to win the game, but we're not. 4th and 1, we're punting. Okay, really? Come on, Brian. Really? I mean, seriously. 4th and 1, let's kick the field goal. Let's take the 3 points, It just seems so conservative. And then when you do go for it, it's a run up the middle with Saquon Barkley. I mean, seriously. It's just like, it's unexcusable, some of these decisions. I mean, and this play calling, like I said, I can sit in front of my TV and say, well, folks, Saquon Barkley's about to run up the middle for a negative 2-yard loss. I mean, I can literally sit there and say that. Like, I know exactly what they're going to do on 4th and 1. And it's like, what if you rolled out in a formation that Saquon Barkley usually gets the ball, fake the handoff, roll it out, quarterback runs, gets 5 yards. That's a first down. And I just thought of that right here. So the situational awareness, I think, has been off for Brian Dable. And it's like, what, like, why did you go from last year being gutsy, making the right decision, to this year being more conservative? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He was the coach of the year last year. You can't fire him. I'm not saying you should fire him. I'm just saying, it's questionable. You got to question it. All right. I mean, that's what we got to do as fans. We got to question what Brian Dable, some of the decisions he makes. And sure, are these decisions easy? I'm sure they're not. I'm not saying they are. I've never coached an NFL game. I'm not saying I have coached an NFL game. Like, that's not my point. My point is as a fan, some of these decision making is questionable at the time of the decision making. And it's really, you got to think about it. You really do. So we'll see what happens in this offseason. Obviously, it's going to be an exciting one for the New York Giants. You hope they are active in free agency. You could probably see them drafting a rookie quarterback at some point, whether that's the first round, the second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, or even adding one free agency. You don't know. Maybe they trade for one. Heck, we don't know. But I'll have all your offseason coverage for you here. We'll be covering the draft as usual. Senior Bowl starts in Mobile, February. I believe the game is on February 3rd, so I'll do some coverage of that like I did last year. And yeah, guys, it's great to be back. I appreciate all of you. If you're new, please subscribe. This is this podcast we started last off season. We had some equipment issues. So I got a new laptop. I'm ready to go. All right, we're ready. We're back on the Giants Chronicles podcast here for another off-season coverage. But with that, guys, that's going to be it for here on the Giants Chronicles podcast. I will see you guys next week. Or we may have an emergency podcast out, a second podcast of the week on a Wink Martindale or a Mike Cat coordinator firings. Obviously, we don't expect Brian Dable to be fired, but coordinators for sure are going to be going. Bobby Johnson, O-line coach. God, I hope he goes. He should be one of the first one out. With that, guys, as always, thanks for watching, and let's go Big Blue.